Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leftovers podcast for the AARPGs thing we do. Tonight we have Scott from Orcusdorkus and TITTERPIGS and some other things here with us, joining us. And we'll give Scott, say hello, Scott.
Hello. Greetings all. But I just want to start off by saying you're not Ken. You're not Robin. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong podcast. Okay,
We've
That's okay.
absconded with you.
We've absconded you from the our terrible East Coast banners. We just rushed in and grabbed you and took you out of the room. So so of course my Matt, my PowerPoint friend, will give us a few announcements before we get into it. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Hey, I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Thanks for tuning in. As we're moving into the holiday season, we've got kind of a good schedule coming up. Of course, tonight, Orcusdorkus talking about all kinds of things. TTRPG. Next week, we're just going to be too drunk, too full to do anything. So we're taking off for the holiday. And then for December, we're going to start the month out strong, heading up to PAX Unplugged. So we're hoping to reach out, see folks out there, meet with some folks, and play a few games. And then on the 17th of December, not a Thursday night for this particular one, we are doing a live extravaganza, Oh Holy Night. It's going to be a live game. We'll be playing the whole TTRPG system. If you're not familiar with it, it stands for Human Occupied Landfill. It's a great rule book. It's all done, it's handwritten, and it's got some great art. So that's what's coming up. As soon as we know more, we'll let you know. The only other thing for us today is just, we have, we're not closing any doors. We're still on Twitter, and we're going to stay on X, I guess X. But we've also created a Blue Sky. And so we're over there. I, as non-technically savvy, am trying to figure out how this works. So we're reaching out. We're hoping to make, hook up with old friends and meet new friends too while we're at it. So not closing any doors, but hopefully we're opening some new ones. So that's what I've got, Sean. That's it for my announcements.
So yes, we are here, and I was just putting the banners up, and I also typed. So Cyborg Prime, are we using SteamYard? Yes, we are. We like it, and you've joined Blue Sky. Welcome. So so the whole Blue Sky thing is people are joining it, and actually there's a lot of people joining it. If you can be on both platforms, guys. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
I want to thank you everybody for joining again. And Scott he was on one night. He's like, put me on, and then I'm like, I don't know this guy. Who knows him? And Nathan's like, I know him. I'm like, well, Matt, and they reach out to him because I don't get to go to all the cons, unfortunately. So they do all the interviews, and I can't even go to PAX this year. So eventually I'll meet everybody I follow.
Sean's leash is very short.
No, I have a job and responsibilities, unfortunately.
Cool.
Yeah. So, anywho, it's great to get everybody on so I can see him and talk to him. And thanks for joining us, Scott. So
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So to start with, I'm going to give us a chance, give us a little bit of background about yourself when it comes to gaming, and if you wish, like what age you got into it, what did you start with,
Sure.
things like that, and in your journey a little bit.
Sure. Before I jump in, I just want to say hi to Cyborg Prime. He's in my Thursday night Traveler game that I play in. Our game's been rescheduled. I wasn't going to attend tonight because of this anyways, but unfortunately the game's been rescheduled. So I guess he's stuck with watching me babble on.
We're going to play now. All right,
yeah,
I got my character. Let's go.
We're so glad. It's so easy to schedule gaming sessions. We're so glad we're able to cause additional chaos.
I know, right?
No, but the good news is the Game Master rescheduled for other reasons. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I waited until he canceled it so I don't get blamed. So it's like afterwards, like, oh, by the way, I'm on a podcast tonight. So, but no. So yeah, my story is I wouldn't say it's identical, but it's very similar to everyone else's. My introduction to role-playing games was Dungeons and Dragons, like so many others. But my introduction to Dungeons and Dragons took a different path than most because my direct connection to it was not the role playing game itself. It was the Endless Quest books by Rose Estes, where a friend of mine brought the game to school or the book to school. I borrowed it. I was really in the second grade
Wow.
when I got the book, and I was just instantly enamored. The story, the art, that this is an interactive game, so to speak. I had known about Choose Your Own Adventures, but whereas the Choose Your Own Adventures
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of ran the gambit of genres, this one was more my style because I was already, I was a very early reader. I had, and this says, I mean, I'm not saying that I was able to do a thesis on it, but I'd started reading The Hobbit and other fantasy things, and the Black Cauldron things like that, Lloyd Alexander. But that aside, it's just like this is interesting. And so when he came and asked for the book, I'm like, what book? And then it's just like, well, if you like that, there's other stuff that, that there's games that are associated with that. So a bit of time went by, and then my friend who lived in my street, I went to his house, and his dad had a copy of the Mulvey box, the purple box, blue box, whatever you want to call it, depending on how colorblind you are.
Yeah.
And had a copy of Castle Amber in it, and opened the box up, pretended like I read through the rules, figured out what I was going to do. This map looks cool. There's a picture of some bald guy in a boxing ring with some guy with a beard. This is great.
It was me.
Yeah. And so, got together with my friend, and just, we thought we knew what we were doing, made up the rules like so many people did at a certain age who got into it early, and essentially kind of took off from there. And then, rolled into high school and whatnot. Through I've always been a gamer. So if it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons, it was the early days of video games. My brother was an electrical engineer who's older than me. So we always he had the first Apple Macintosh, and then we had, we kind of rolled into, computers, from CGA, purple black graphics to, or what was that? EGA, CGA, VGA. I forget. It's been, a minute.
Fiji was like the last one.
And gaming consoles.
So I'm trying to think the Apple. So I had a buddy whose dad worked for Apple, and they had like an early computer, and I think we had like the Atari 2600. We had like the Atari 2600, something like that.
Yep.
But he had this game on there that blew my mind. It was the first time I'd ever played what I would call a real computer game. It was called like Art of War.
Yes.
Something like that. And you had like spearmen, fighter, whatever, but it was like complex. It was like the first, like, not just like running around and pressing the fire button kind of game. And I don't know if you'd ever seen that, or if you'd ever play that, or I don't know. It was not the new Art of War, but it was like this early war game, and it blew my mind. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I kind of recall a game like that. The primary ones that I remember was the very, very early days of a flight simulator game on the Mac. Just little vector graphics, and another game that I'm not even going to remember the name of it, but it wasn't Shadow Dark, but it was like had shadow in its name. It was like a point and click kind of adventure game. That was kind of like one of the first kind of like role-playing games, so to speak. And it wasn't Shadow Gate, I think it was called. But yeah, so that was the the early introduction to video games. And we were a console family, Intellivision, ColecoVision.
I remember that.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, wow.
Right there. Yeah. So, and that was a lot of fun. I know it's been redone a dozen times over, and it's nostalgia and hey kids, there was a time where new technology was a mouse. Seeing a mouse was like seeing
That was huge.
Something from the future. But
look, I have a wireless.
but so yeah, ColecoVision, all the the light gun games, we were always kind of I was lucky to have parents who were into that, and being the youngest child with a huge gap between me and my other brothers, I was, kind of like the only child. So I reaped all the benefits, and they still hate me to this day.
Good for you.
But then we rolled into high school, and which was still primarily, Dungeons and Dragons. And then we first edition, we really didn't do a lot of basic or BX or BECME. It was mainly AD&D that we were playing, but I was always the one of like, let's try something different. AD&D is fun. But I was the guy who would go to the hobby shop or the game store and come home with this, this new game. Hey, look, there's a game. Yeah, there's a game based on ElfQuest, the comic book we all like. And they're like, oh fuck, no. And
elves, really?
Yeah. Hey, there's this game, called RuneQuest. They're like, Bronze Age. Ew, what is this, school? So I was primarily shot down, and like so many people, hormones kicked in, and our high school gaming group just went to the wind. So, but always kept up with it myself. Dabbled a little bit here and there, but primarily my fix for role-playing games was through computer games, and the occasionally keeping on the just the general idea of where Dungeons and Dragons was going. But that was kind of my gap period until later in life, had kids, and here we are today. So
oh wow, that's interesting.
So you had a bit of a you're playing Traveler now. Traveler was the second system. So the person who introduced me to D&D also introduced me about a year or so after that to Traveler. And that was like our first, like, oh look, there's math. So yeah, because I love fantasy, but pretty much every time, if it's like fantasy or sci-fi, I love sci-fi. So
yeah,
Traveler was cool, and then there's a lot of other those kind of games came out back then. Do you remember your first character?
Here it comes.
I don't remember the first one I made with my friend with the Moldvay box set. But I distinctly remember the first character I made, what would be my long-term group through high school, and that was Gargle Steadfast, the mage or the wizard or whatever they were called in that edition, and he carried over into second edition when it came out. And eventually what ended him is there was I forget what it was, but there was a situation where he was playing Russian roulette with a wand of wonder.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
Put a wand of wonder to your head. It could be butterflies, it could be bubbles, or it could be, a lightning
shooting
bolt.
Stars, or
Meteor swarm. Oh,
right, exactly. So it was I think it was a lightning bolt or something, but that's what ended my character. But that was the one I remember the most. And he's made returns when every once in a while, if I run into if I join into like an Old School Essentials or some other campaign, he kind of will make a return if there's a a class that I can associate him with. So
well, that's
it's
interesting.
Just a stupid name, but
that's fine. It's fun, I mean, we got somebody who plays a guy named Darg again right now.
Yes,
anyway,
Darg the
I never
Bastard.
interesting because I remember the Choose Your Adventure books.
Mm-hmm.
The first fantasy novel interesting I read was because my mom was a big reader, so she's like, you should read a book. She gives me this book, Lord Foulsbane by Stephen Donaldson.
Ah, okay.
You've read that? So you read that? That is a fucking dark book. It's good. The fantasy in it was amazing, and but the protagonist is a bit of a dick.
Yep.
But I remember reading. I got sucked into the books, and the books were great. And then I went to everything like Hyperion and all these Anderson, all the other big fantasy novels, and then that was a bit of a gateway too, because I played D&D. I was about 7, Played a little in high school. But a friend we gamed with now, actually, we went to the same high school. And then at community college, I went to community college. I was in the Marines, and I went to community college, and I ran into, we had a medieval society. And I said, what do you guys do? Well, we go to Ren Fairs, and we play D&D. I'm like, play what? So we went and played with them. Matt, that's where I met Matt. And but we play a lot of games. Like we played Heroes Unlimited and the Palladium series of games and Rifts and all that stuff. And
Yeah, when
it's
people
funny.
talk about like I did a little experimentation in college. When we talk about it, it was a lot of our
Yeah,
first
listen.
break from D&D, right? It was
Yeah.
right the very nerdy, like yeah, I did a lot of experimenting in college with like
Yeah.
superhero games, and so it was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Okay.
where we really broke out from
Oh,
because
yeah.
it was really just Traveler
Yeah.
and D&D for me until college, and then it was like the world is your oyster. There were so many
Well,
different systems.
like I said, I was someone who always would buy something new. So I would go to, we had a local game store called Game Castle, which is, I wouldn't say it's famous, but it was the game store. I'm sure this you'll know who he is. Matt Colville went to before he became Matt Colville. So that was his local game store because he lives in Southern California. But it was just what you would think an old school game store back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s would be.
Hmm.
They just had everything, and there was always stuff going on, and there was always people to looking for games to play. So yeah, I picked up Traveler. I picked up the hero system. I picked up all these games over the years,
Who's Carl?
but never got to who's
Yeah, it's Who's. Gotta
yeah.
have Who's.
I know who's from the gaming NBS crew. So, but so I'm familiar with them. So a lot of things you'll see on my social feed, so to speak, is I'm going through and rereading a lot of the games from that era, from the 80s and 90s that I never got to play, that I knew existed, but because my friends were such shallow assholes and couldn't, crawl out of the AD&D hole that they dug themselves into.
Yeah, those losers.
I know. But so yeah, and if there's an opportunity for me to run or play an old school game that I haven't played, that's the primary reason. Not really, I don't have nostalgia for these games because I never played much of them. It's just I want to experience them because I didn't get a chance to. It's the whole midlife crisis bullshit situation of,
You sound like Nathan. Nathan's buying all. I'm not going to get a chance to play all the games before I die. I'm like, God, Nathan did like The Cure, so he's a little, like that sometimes. So, but I'm just like, Jesus, man. I mean, because I'm older than Nathan. I'm like, thanks,
Yeah.
man. I'm going to be in the hole before you. So you're just saying my clock is ticking. I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Well, one of the things I did try, we did actually try to run because it was similar. Was we did pick up a copy of Palladium Fantasy, and sat down at the table, and I think probably a good 2 hours later we binned it and said no, we're going back to AD&D, and then I went back to it, and because the most evocative thing about those was those beautiful covers. Yeah, I've got a copy of the old red and black, the first edition one on my shelf along with that. But the secondary books, these wonderful covers that were done on there, and then you would look within and realize, oh, they lied for the most part. But things like riffs and whatnot, these I was pulling these things off the shelves. I would take them home and read them, so I'm familiar with all these old games. But it's still, it's a shame that I never got to play them. But that's better for at least knowing that Palladium is a complete pain in the ass to run, and the rule system of riffs can be a complete headache just by reading it, let alone playing it. And
we love.
You do have to respect a company that was like, oh, play balance, nah.
you have to respect it. You have to respect an author who says, here's 480 pages of rules. Index, loser.
Right. Yeah, we went through an entire phase of Heroes Unlimited, Robotech, the Rifts,
Supernatural, Tales of Supernatural.
right,
Yeah.
right, all that stuff. And it's funny because, there's a lot, I see it online, a lot of discussion, right? And I'd be kind of curious your thoughts. There's a lot of old school sort of movements and groups, like old school gaming. It was gritty, it was tougher. And I'm not gonna argue with that. But I wonder, like, I think of some of the early role-playing games I played, and I don't know, there is something to be said of having 3 to 4 decades of design feedback and hopefully you'd think people are making games easier, more fun to play, because I have a few old games.
Uh-huh.
Like I have an old sci-fi game called Aftermath.
Yep.
And
Oh,
it's like
Aftermath.
and
Yeah.
my internal joke with that is that after the math you get to role play.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was such a cumbersome system.
Crunchy system.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, how your thoughts of like some of this old school nostalgia, maybe some of these games, if we went back and played them 30, 40 years later, might not be as well designed as we remember them.
Oh, you can always remember the good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that to a certain degree up to a particular era, especially the early '80s games, where primarily who was interested in these games were younger men, or young boys interested in things like science, mathematics. These were the mathematicians. These were the students that were going to MIT and Berkeley, and they just naturally gravitated towards the structure and the mathematics of that. But it's like someone writing a technical manual. You don't want the engineer to write the technical manual, because all he's going to do is regurgitate the engineering aspects, and someone who needs to know how to work with this, who's not an engineer, isn't going to know what to do with it. So things like Aftermath, or someone who is really, really into simulationist and guns, like Phoenix Command and things like that. These were people that were setting a foundation, because it was still relatively new, and there weren't people to say, "Hey, man, this is confusing as hell," because there wasn't that 4 or 5 decades of people going, look at Aftermath.
Right.
So it's,
that was a lot of, you needed a calculator. It was horrible.
but I wouldn't say don't play it, because I'm a big fan of, the foundational history of the hobby. And I do feel that in order for you, if you're going to be a game designer, you need to broaden your horizons as far as they can go. You may love Dungeons and Dragons, you may love Powered by the Apocalypse, and you may know it inside and out. And sure, you can write a decent D&D game or make a game powered by the Apocalypse, but you pigeonhole yourself and you're stuck, because there's so many other things out there that the people who created the modern versions of Dungeons and Dragons and things like Powered by the Apocalypse, what enabled them to make these games was because they exposed themselves to so many different games, and they saw flaws or opportunities to make changes and create these newer games that wouldn't have happened if they just stuck to a single game from their past. So yes, go out and maybe borrow a PDF of Aftermath.
Oh yeah, you can find it online easy, I'm sure.
It's a great setting. It's a great system, and and everything. Like I'm one of those people. Like I still have my fourth. Almost every game system has something good, right? There's some innovation, some creation. People will often you hear a lot of jokes talk about like D&D 4th edition, right? And I think it probably is the edition we played as a group the least. But 4th edition even had, now maybe I'm wrong because I've played so many games, but up until 4th edition, I think your wizards would have to had to memorize their spells. You'd have a few spells and then you're done. And I think it was 4th edition with the cards that added basically the idea of an attack cantrip that you could cast pretty much over and over. Didn't do any. I think, isn't that where that sort of kind of came in, was in 4th edition. I'm trying to remember though if that's right. It was like the cards.
So many editions.
I know.
Cantrips, I believe, technically cantrips were introduced in 2nd edition, but
right.
But as far as them being a secondary source that you didn't have to take up spells with, I know they were in 3.5, but I don't think they were, like the spam button they would be in 4th and 5th edition, where you can just, generously use these cantrips if you're out of your primary spells, so to speak.
Right,
So
especially having a weapon. I hadn't played a spellcaster for mostly ever, and I played one first time in 5th edition, and I was like, oh, why do I even have a weapon? I can cast this this thing all the time, right? So I don't know, and I actually kind of like that because I felt like in the old game, the reason I never played a wizard, I always played fighters, is every round the fighter had something to do, smack something, right? And I know they're more complex now. There's different kinds of fighters, but I think that was one thing for me that from fourth edition and a couple other things were like, hey, these are good ideas. Let's carry these on. Maybe let's forget some of them.
Yeah.
And
Well, fourth edition was good for that because the foundation it was based upon, which, for lack of a better term, it was a video game foundation. The popularity of World of Warcraft, what they were garnering for that, it was in the culture of the time. The striker, the healer, the tank, all of those things were part of the video game lexicon, and they were trying to take advantage of that. But I think what had happened is just the 3.5 culture may not have been, as far as their video game aspect, they weren't fully indoctrinated in the World of Warcraft, and their video game experiences were the original Baldur's Gate and other RPGs, which mirrored that. They weren't really action orientated. Not when I say they, I mean some, but this is all opinion, speculation, which is how I live my life. But it's one of those things where, and I'm a firm believer that if fourth edition came out later than what it did, it might have been embraced differently as the young people who were just being indoctrinated in that culture are now older. That's their nostalgia. Their nostalgia are for things like World of Warcraft and using terminology like tank, striker, healer. So
I just realized something. There's people that have never played basic D&D. Like for us, it's like, oh yeah, it's nostalgia. For them, like, what is that mystery you speak of? And you're like, and that just hit me like, oh my God, there are people who will hear this who will go, what are they talking about? Second edition. There was a second edition?
Sean, there's people who've never played fourth. Yeah. And I don't mean just because they chose not to.
Yeah,
that's
true.
We're
that old, Sean. There are people who have only ever known. There's a vast majority of players only ever known when they think role playing. It's just fifth edition D&D. That is
wow.
That is
you got a point. That's true.
And so we were kind of back to the video game thing. I agree with you. Our group has a really interesting mix. We have people who play TTRPGs, and we have people who play video games. We have several people who do not play video games at all.
Yeah.
It's just not interesting. It's the same content, but they are just not, or they've played like one or two, but it is not their thing.
Yeah.
You're right. They definitely went for the World of Warcraft audience. And I guess I would ask, do you think, and without getting too much into it, because I know it's like, so would you think that we're seeing some of that again today with some of the design for the? Now I am actually, and so talk about speculation. I have not purchased, nor have I read the new books yet. And I'm gonna buy them because I'm an addict, whether people, so they'll eventually be on the shelf. But from some of the comments and stuff I've heard, do you think that there's some of that going on now too, where they're looking to say, hey, can we broaden this? We want to get all the people who just played Baldur's Gate, the new version, but have never played it. I know. Do you think
talked about this before too? Yeah.
Or I've seen some of the VTT stuff they're trying to do that's making it look more like a video game. Or
well, okay. So much. I'm sure you may have heard Nathan, moan and groan about how he wasn't there in time to go to the D&D seminar that he got invited to. But we went to that. Sat through the whole PowerPoint presentation and received my free copy of the player's handbook, which I kind of paged through a bit. I mean, I'll be honest, the direction, in my opinion, of where Dungeons & Dragons is going is just not my thing anymore, because I feel that it's become rather vanilla and safe, but I also understand why, for a variety of reasons, because one, it's essentially being manned by a large corporation who wants to make it as open as possible and spread its wings as far as possible to make it as much profit as possible. They're not necessarily as concerned with the game itself. They just want people to buy the book and buy into the brand. You know, the money isn't necessarily in the books now. It's in the D&D as a brand. Buy our games, buy our T-shirts. You know, go watch our movies, and you know, buy. You know, it's you know, buy official this, official that. You know.
Oh my God, you turned him into Disney. Jesus.
Yeah.
Too far.
But some of the things, but they still haven't fully let go, because they're still dangling the nostalgia carrot in front of, you know, the grognards like, you know, myself and others and you guys who still, you know, it's like, you know, I've seen it so many times and times again. It's like, I am just not interested in the new edition. You know, it seems too cushy. It's too this, it's too that. And for, you know, the other side of the, you know, the agenda, it's too woke for whatever freaking reason. And then, you know, I'm never, ooh, Greyhawk. You know, so it's, and then, you know, with,
right.
But I think the people who are handling that are people who kind of, they're not part of the people who are nostalgic for it. You know, it's like, you know, my dad liked that D&D cartoon. Let's put that on the cover.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, whereas other people are like, yeah, that was the cartoon, but that had nothing to do with, you know, with the game. We would sit there and complain. That's not how an acrobat works.
Why doesn't the Cavalier have a sword? Why does he just have a shield?
What magic item is that?
Take Bobby's hammer, and you know, it's like, yeah, I know.
He's got his piece of wood and clubbing people.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I was talking, I don't know who, I think it might have been over this weekend. We kind of had our retreat, and we were talking about how, you know, and this is maybe something.
My God, man, you sound like a business thing. Jesus.
Well, right. Our getaway, our geek weekend. So I just talked about how the environment is so different. It used to be like, you know, you played first edition D&D.
Yep.
And then second edition D&D came out. And the idea is that 100% of the people are going to jump from first to second. Some people aren't going to, you know, but the gaming, you know, I think this to craft beers. Like I grew up, there was like Bud, you know, now there are so many more choices now that the one difference I think I feel with 6th edition is I know from my own sort of like problem that I'm going to buy it just because I have to have it on my shelf, but I don't know if I'm ever going to play it, and I don't feel sad, worried, upset. I don't really have an opinion on it, because there's so many more games that I'd like to read it, see what they do with it. If I don't like it, I'm not going to feel betrayed. I'm not going to feel like my hobby's been destroyed, because I'll just go play Dragonbane, or I'll go play that. I'll go play a number of other games out there.
Play Aliens. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel safe in my nerddom. I'm not.
Yeah. You were preaching to the choir, my friend. I mean, you're talking to a collector here who went from, you know, rebuying, you know, starting with a couple 5th edition books and maybe rebuying a couple AD&D books to, I've got well over 1,000 books on the shelves. So, and it's the shelfies say a lot, and most of them are gifts. In case my wife's listening.
Yes, those were all gifts. Everybody who's listening right now.
They were all from the UK.
They were not. They're not the vacation fund. No.
But no, I fall into that collector category of, you know, I'm not of the, well, if I don't play it, I get rid of it in a few months or whatever. It's like that's what I do with bread, not books. You know, or
keep
or
bread for a few months. My God, man.
I mean, as long as there's nothing crawling on it, you know.
Okay, so for a second here, we're going to take a pause. So Matt can annoy me with his stuff, but before Matt starts, I want to remind everybody: like, follow, and subscribe. Not just us at the AARPG.com cast. You can get our little backstories, but go to YouTube, follow Orcusdorkus. You get to hear, he has a lot of unboxing. We're going to get that later on, all of his unboxing stuff, because he has unboxed just about all the 1,000 things he has, apparently.
We'll eventually talk about what we brought him on for.
Yeah, but I'm going to steer the direction that way, because we'll keep talking about games, which isn't a bad thing, but I will give you the opportunity. We'll talk about his podcast, which is similar to ours, apparently, TITTERPIGS, which you get on Spotify. This is a Spotify link right here. And, of course, on X, you got to hail Orcusdorkus. Oops, that is not what I wanted to do. Cancel that. And we have
Sean, stop trying to show us your porn.
Yeah.
That being said, my porn, which is motorcycles and fifth wheel trailers. All right. Anyway, at this point, I will turn it over to Matt, who will say
Regale
stuff.
us, right?
Regale us.
No. I just want to remind folks, this is the time in the broadcast where I shamelessly plug. Definitely like, subscribe, and follow. Check us out on YouTube or anywhere you can find our podcast. I also just wanted to throw out there again, we're still putting up additional content, but we also have just on Spotify for right now, we've added a second stream, the AARPG Live, where you can find shows like this, which we normally only have available on our YouTube channel. We've also going in and started to convert them and post them up on Spotify and eventually get them out to the other casters so that you can listen to these if you are someone like me who actually doesn't really watch a lot of actual play stuff. I prefer to listen to it. And one of our cast members, Tim, we were in the car talking about it. He's diametrically opposed. He likes to watch the facial expressions, the interactions. And I like to be lost in I like to be lost in my own head.
I like to watch while I'm driving.
Right, exactly. So if you're commuting, please don't watch. So we do this as an option for some of our stuff that's live only. So hopefully we'll start getting more and more of that loaded on there. And then of course our website where you could come and you can learn more about the cast, except still for Tim, because even though we've talked about this, we still won't. Poor Tim. The big thing is, look, guys, I hate to say it, everyone likes to hug, is the store, right? Time is running out for the holidays. We've got a lot of custom artwork from our different stories. And I know that either yourself or someone is
pins.
Right. If you're a gamer, we're still working on like the AARPG Depends. You could put a nice.
Matt, we weren't going to add that. Thanks for putting it up there.
Weekly pill organizer. All the things we need.
Oh, that would be another good one. I was going to say this not only holds wine.
I thought that's what Nathan gave us this weekend.
It does hone prune juice.
The dice case.
An AARPG pill and dice organizer would be a really great idea. But look, time is running short. If you know a gamer that's leveled up their age stat, they'd get a tickled pink by have one of these, and it'll put pennies in Sean and I's pocket that we can use to get more awesome custom art design for us. So that's all I've got, Sean.
All right, you sure? Okay,
That's
good. I can't believe it.
Much.
I didn't have to use this. So, but that being said, so the shirts are cool. By the way, all the artwork was designed by our friend Jody, who works at Titmouse. They had a great they had a great interview with one of the owners, the owner, I believe.
The owner.
George, right? I think it was George. But anyway, they had an interview with him. I got watched the interview. It was awesome. The guy is, they made a game that, what's this? Follow us on BS. All right. Followed on BS. Nice merch. Thank you. Buy some of our merch, please. Make Matt happy. By the way, it costs him more to make ship the merch than it is for you to buy it.
Oh yeah,
so,
we don't. Yeah, let's
we make no money on this.
Let's pull back the curtain for anyone who's out there under the illusion. Yeah, it is. Merch is not a money making endeavor, I guarantee you. But any money we do make, so it's Chris P. He's the founder.
That's right. It's Chris. George is the I've met Chris before a long time ago.
The Adventure Brothers, that's a longtime fan of that show. It's fantastic.
Oh, he did. They did. God, they were involved in so much shit. Negus XLRS.
Right.
That was
downtown.
A big one.
Right? Was it?
I was at a party in Jersey where they were finishing the demo show for that. The show for a bunch of friends. Jody was one of them. It's good group of people. Anywho, now on this podcast, this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to talk about Scott's stuff.
Oh, my stuff?
Yeah, like your stuff, like your. I want your social security number and but what we've
had people in your house for weeks
looking at you. Where you sleep, where you shit, where you eat and shit, which is disturbing. We need to talk about that. But we want what we like to talk about your podcast. So first of all, you have you do a lot of unboxing, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And you also do stuff with your family, which I think is pretty cool. I've noticed too. I've touched on a few of those, which I think is something we do not do. I don't want my wife being a part of this. She'll beat me with the stick. But anyway, you tell us about your Orcusdorkus RPG shenanigans.
Sure. So it's so a long time ago,
In a galaxy far, far away.
there was a period of time where we were all stuck inside and couldn't go anywhere, and that led to several things: excessive amount of alcohol drinking, the regaining of weight that I had lost prior, and also a lot of boredom because I do IT support, and when there's no businesses to do IT support for because they were closed down, there was just a lot of free time I had. Now, mind you, I wasn't totally out of it. I could still do remote support, which is like I have a lot of it. But so what kind of led to the channel was one of the things that I got into is I made friends with a group of people from the UK. There was Bud from Bud's RPG Review. Some of you may be familiar with him, and Pookie, who's got a blog called Reviews from Relay. And Pookie is, a very influential reviewer. He's been doing it for a long time. He has edited many different RPGs. You name an RPG, more than likely he's proofreaded it, edited it one way or another. So I got invited to play a actual play with the other people that we were just hanging out with online in what was called a virtual pub. So a bunch of people from the UK would get together in what was called the Manchester Arms, and it would have people from the industry, from the YouTube channels all over. And just because I knew Bud, I was like the RPG groupie. So I just kind of sat in the corner and just kind of was quiet and didn't want to talk to, I reckon that's Paul Fricker. He's one of the creators of 7th edition AD&D. Don't make a fool of yourself, dummy. And then one night it was, or I should say afternoon, because, it's 8 p.m. When it's 8 p.m. there, it's 12 noon here. I had a bit of whiskey and unwound and made a fool of myself. And after that, everything was gravy because they're like, we were wondering why you were so uptight, Scott. So anyway, I got pulled into this actual play with the channel was called James Corp, CROP, and I ran an adventure called Highway of Blood, which is a Call of Cthulhu adventure.
Yes.
In 1970s grindhouse adventure, and ran that for a group of people. And this was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. I didn't even know how to stream. I had no equipment. I didn't, OBS was something that my mom used, was the feminine hygiene napkins, as far as I remember from the 80s. And so I ran that, familiarized myself with Roll20 and whatnot. And then that led to playing in a couple actual plays. And then that kind of trailed off a little bit. And then there was a channel called, oh God, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like Rolling Crits or something like that. It's a gent and his daughter talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics. And I just love,
familiar.
Yeah. Sorry, for not remembering it. My memory, changes. But it's him and his daughter, and they would just do this wacky stuff like once a week, talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics, another thing. So I'm like, well, I've got nothing better to do. So I got myself a cheap microphone. I got a camera. I just received a Kickstarter, the Midderlands for 5th edition by Glenn Seal. Glenn Seal, if you don't know who he is, look him up. So I coaxed my daughter over and said, hey, do you want to be on camera? And, she's a preteen girl who just, grew up on, YouTube unboxing. She's like, fuck yeah. And I said, you can't curse because people think I'm a bad parent. So she said, yeah. And so I had her sit next to me for the first video, and we did an unboxing together. And the video was bad. The sound was bad. I had no idea what I was doing. And we just kind of, and that was fun. I think we did one more. And then, again, ADHD kicked in. She's like, that was fun. Screw you. I don't want to hang out with you anymore. But I just continued getting a bunch of Kickstarters in because there wasn't anything better to do. I was ordering role-playing games because they were all on sale. Kickstarters were rolling in, and what the unboxing allowed me to do was it allowed me to give a pseudo review of a game by just going through it and giving a first impression. without having to go through the aspect of sitting down and writing a real review, which is hard, believe it or not. So I would go through these books, and with background and experience, give a bit of a first impression of it. Wouldn't say it was a review, but say, hey, this is not unlike you going to a gaming store and flipping through it for the first time. So hopefully my first impression allows you a first impression, and it garner enough interest for you to check out this game or don't. And so that's kind of where it took off from there. And that's kind of what it primarily has been for the most part for the YouTube channel. I've done started doing a couple interviews about a year ago, which is a lot of fun. I did my first real review of a game where I sat down and did it. One thing you should check out if you haven't is for Bud's RPG review. He turned 50, and I grabbed as many people as I can who knew Bud from the industry, YouTube and whatnot, and did a 50th anniversary video, which was a hell of a lot of fun to make. Put it all together. It's just perfect Gonzo chaos. It's just the whole goal is to get as many people together, have it be as funny and stupid as possible, and make him cry. And it worked. So boom, I don't care if it got 5 views or 2 views. It's just, hey, happy 50th birthday, you old fart.
Is this it here?
Yes.
Paranoia.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the beginning. Now that's Pookie.
Okay.
But it's kind of a mishmash of various. I contacted people. I said, hey, can you send me a video just saying happy birthday to Bud in any way possible that you want? And I got all these strange and weird videos. I edited them together, changed them up a little bit, added sound effects and whatnot, and plugged them all together. So it's just, and I'm not a video fucking editor. I'm playing with stuff and just, experimenting. So
we're going to have you explain this.
Okay. All right. So
That's that looks like this weekend.
So Bud does his reviews top down with just his hands. He's known as the Hands. And how I met Bud was
Sounds like a
this.
mobster.
So Bud absolutely hates the game Toon with a passion.
Oh, Toon, yeah.
And before I actually got to know him, he had made some sort of comment on Twitter, and I commented back, and he said, and I said, what would it take to get you to review Toon? Because he's like, I will never review this crap game ever.
Apparently.
So he said, well, if you get enough, there's a charity thing that goes over the UK called Red Nose Day.
I heard that. Yep.
And he said, if you can raise a certain amount of money for Red Nose Day, I will do a review of it in Mickey Mouse gloves. And so Pookie, who I hadn't met yet, sends me a direct message and says, what do we got to do to make this happen? So I went through as many social, and Bud had like 3,000 followers at that time. So it wasn't hard to find people to do that. And within like a week's time, I think he said, if you can raise $250 or something, raised well over that. And he had to do a review of Toon, a game he hates, in Mickey Mouse gloves. Now imagine his format is top down on a desk with the book. Him trying to turn these pages with these Mickey Mouse gloves as he's doing the review, and we've been friends ever since. So this is an homage to that video in his 50th birthday video. So I'm interspliced between the people who are doing videos, just essentially making fun of Bud one way or another as we're going through it. So that right there, that was documenting how hard it was as an unexperienced video and sound editor, how hard it was to hop on a program I know nothing about, splice this together and make a coherent video for his freaking birthday that was going up on YouTube to be viewed by hundreds of people. So, but yeah, so that's that. In a nutshell, it's the YouTube channel has always been something just for fun, nothing that I had any intention of monetizing or even taking off. It was primarily done out of boredom, but also a way for me to express and introduce aspects of the hobby that I love and to get people into it. Because that's always been one thing I'm always into is getting people into the hobby for a variety of reasons. I'm a self-proclaimed cheerleader for the hobby. And the more people that I can get in, the more games that I can get them to play. If I can get, big proponent of getting kids into RPGs too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been the goal of the channel, is just being a place for just to express the love of the hobby. Not you bitch about it, not moan about it. I don't put anything on, negative, other than I did a few issues or a few episodes with my son and his friends who are 5th edition fans. And when they started coming out with changes to 6th edition, you could see the new edition wars began. The next generation is carrying the torch. And they're just like, this is bullshit. They fucked this up. And then
what the hell's wrong with them?
Suddenly I can see it. It would be the three of them, like us, 40 years from now, going, man, what? 5th edition was where it's at. What are you doing playing 12th edition? That's some woke bullshit right there.
The 12th edition favors the aliens. Whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever the political climate nonsense that it is in the future, what it will be. But no. And the other things that I was always keen on was also, not really directly, but kind of saying, hey, not all the old grognards in the hobby are a bunch of graying neckbeards who says everything's woke because things scare them. We don't say you have purple hair with disdain, or the get off my lawn and the kids scare me and everything's crap because the culture wars, they're just 5th edition is destroying D&D. Do you play it? No, of course not. Well, why do you care? Well, fuck you. So
nah, it's just, like you look at a game like I've had other people on, and it's like you said, it's safe. You call it vanilla. I said it got too safe. It's some sort of one point, like you can be resurrected and it's easy to survive, and you could get beat to death, and there's magic items everywhere, and it's sort of like we went to play Dragonbane. Mm-hmm. And the first time we played it, we were attacked by these wargs, right? Mm-hmm. And it hits one of the characters, and I'm like, it was me, I think, my character. And it did a lot of damage to my character, but I was still up. Mm-hmm. I think it was me or Nathan. I forgot whose character. But anyway, 3 of the characters were like, oh my God, I'd be dead. Like, oh, we're in it. This is real. We could die. Yeah. And, only real thing that saved us is because we had such a big party, because we had totally expected more fatalities by the point we were at now in the game, which was almost done.
You guys have not died.
I swear I tried.
Dragonbane is hilarious because it's like you can play for a year and still be first level. That's how it feels. Like you get increases, you get better at doing things, but it never changes the lethality equation.
Yeah,
you're never because you don't get. I mean, there's things you can increase your hit points, but it's not like massive, right? So you're always very vulnerable to the dangers. Always feel real, and I get that. We spar back and forth on sort of like D&D sort of 5th edition. I know when Nathan played in the game that we did for ours, like he purposely, it was like his protest play style. He would just do the worst things possible. Like,
all the time. Echoes.
He went down.
I run in.
Almost
what? What do you mean you run in?
I
run in.
In almost every single fight, he was taken below 0 hit points. But you got a character who's got a cantrip or whatever, some like first level heal spell or whatever. It's deathly. So he kind of
But it became fun.
It was for him, and yet for me, some of that safety when I played Dragonbane, it was a big shift because I was so used to playing games like D&D where you can be kind of reckless and I jump off the castle and jump on the dragon's back and all the things you see in the movies. You do those in Dragonbane, you're going to die. right? So it was
Yes.
a little adjustment to pull back and go, I can't play this person
Oh my god.
like a movie. I had to play this like a dark horror book. I got to be a little more serious.
Well, I've had so many characters die playing in the last couple of years with the live game. This weekend we played Walking Dead. I kid you not. My
Okay.
character is a badass. Actually, he's smoking
The
people.
only
I'm killing
badass in our
everybody,
group. Yeah.
and I'm
The-
smoking people. Right, and Tim, or the game, great game. He sort of screwed up a little bit, and I didn't know the rules really well.
Yeah.
So the guy throws a Molotov at me, and I'm like, I'd say I'll shoot it out of the air. Jokingly, I said, "Listen, that's not realistic, so I'm just going to dodge."
Yeah.
And I fail. And I didn't know I could push to roll.
Oh, okay.
My friend Chris next to me goes, "You should have pushed to roll." I go, "Wait a minute." And so I fail, and he says, "I take damage." I go, "Wait a minute. I didn't know I could push to roll. Let me push to roll," because I'm wearing this ride gear, but doesn't, just for whatever reason, doesn't do anything to help you when if somehow the Molotov cocktail goes completely through it. Now I've
Sure.
worn ride gear. You got a couple,
Yes.
but anyway,
Been Molotov cocktailed in
but
riot
I
gear.
failed. Yeah, well, not quite like that. But anyway, I got a bomb thrown at me. That's just a little different. But anyway, I think I failed 2 rolls, and I literally burned. Oh, we got to get you to a medical facility down in somewhere. And I'm like, Nate. I looked at Tim. I said, I'm dead. There's no way my character's going to survive this. I'm literally
So-
going to die because this
He
in
was
this
very
world.
kind to you at the end because he had the great luck of
Yes.
rolling of losing the
did.
last hit point,
Yeah.
being on fire, and on his critical chart writing coma. So he's just laying there burning.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm dead. I said,
none
no,
of us
somebody
are
will see you. I said, Tim, nobody's going to see me. I said, the best thing my character got to do in the end is like the other guys, they were in the house and he's on fire before he goes out and
Right.
he yells, "I'm going to listen to you burn alive and like it," or something like that. And they're like, "Fuck you, fuck," because they couldn't come out because the rest of the party said he literally did burn alive. It's like,
Your character's last action was to taunt someone before you fell down the stairs
And
unconscious
died.
on fire.
yeah, to taunt them, because that's the type of character. It's like, I'm going to die, but you're going to die worse than me somehow.
Oh,
So,
love it. Love it.
but the game was like it went that way because,
Yeah.
and that was work. I was like, damn, I really enjoyed playing it, but at the end, I'm like, okay, I'm dead, I'm good. And there's something to that, like you say, like the vanillaness of a game. To me, it gets a little boring now.
Well, I can appreciate that if it's what the game proposes to be.
Yeah,
Like-
yeah.
Like there's an Asian thing, I think it's a Japanese themed, traveling RPG called Ryutama, which is a bit of like it's a bit of a Ghibli thing or Ghibli thing where it's you and other big eye, small mouth anime characters who are just going on a nice little traveling trip to go discover life and stuff like that, and just have a nice little fluffy, cozy game. Great, if that's what
Yes.
if that's what I sign up for, and I know what to expect, that's great.
I agree with that.
But if I'm going into to kick ass, and chew bubble gum and take down dragons and and destroy set and and just full on sword and sorcery, and I kick the door down and I tangle with the worst of the worst, and then finally I'm going down in a blaze of glory, and it's like, oh, make a death save. Well, okay. Oh, okay, I failed. Like, okay, 2 more times, please. It's like, but I want to go down a blaze of glory. No, it's
No,
okay.
no.
So,
I'm
but
going to hit you with Spare to Dying. You're going to be fine. Oh,
now I don't hate 5th edition, right? I enjoy it for what it is.
I like 5th edition. I do.
As long as it does what it's supposed to do. When it starts branching out into other things and tries to do something that it's not, or tries to sell you a bag of lies and tell you that it can do anything and everything, or 5th edition is, like you said, 5th edition is just like Dragonbane. No, it's not. Don't let the cutesy twee graphics of Dragonbane fool you. Quick story about my introduction to Dragonbane. I got the quick start when it first came out, and I looked at it. I kind of read over it. I'm all, this is interesting. I can, it was easy to grok the rules, and I can kind of see where it was going. Dragonbane is one of those games that you don't know how deadly it is till you sit down to play it. So I got my friends together. We did the opening scenario that came with it, and right away it's like people were this close to death and they didn't even crawl down the tunnel yet. It was just the goblin introduction, and I'm like, what is this game? At least Aliens waits till the last part before everything goes super crazy, but this is just balls to the wall in. So had to adjust to the expectations of the players in the games. But so the one of the things that people say, well, it's like, well, oh, you're like you're all the rest, you just like the old school games and this and that. It's like, no, I don't. I'll play 5th edition. I like 5th edition, but don't tell me we're going to play a Conan Sword and Sorcery game with 5th edition. We're not. We're going to play a high fantasy. We're the superheroes of this high fantasy universe, and things may get a little shaky, but ultimately, we're going to win and save the day. That's the whole purpose of 5th edition. Everyone's up on this glorious, shiny pedestal, and everyone's going to have their moment in the spotlight in the sun to be the superhero that they want to be. It's fine for that. But if you want to get dark and gritty and dangerous and whatnot, I would say, well, we're going to go play something else, because 5th edition isn't going to provide that to you. So, before I don't know when you guys are going to wrap up, but I just want to throw this out because Keith will hate me if I don't. So real quick, the other thing that I do is the TITTERPIGS podcast. TITTERPIGS is a totally different thing. Keith was someone that I met during the online pub days during lockdown. Keith himself, he helms a gaming review site called Rolling Boxcars, and has been for several years now. Keith is also within the industry. He does a lot of editing for a variety of different games. He was most recently he was one of the editors for the new Pendragon game that came out, and he's currently working on the Game Masters guide for Pendragon that hopefully will be out sometime within the next 4 or 5 years, whatever. Keith get busy, so that kind of came about from we were playing games together, we were hanging out, we were chatting weekly with all the other people, and just kind of got a while. I kind of got into a little, I've just got burnt out on doing video editing, right? But I really didn't know I'm not a big fan of solo podcasts, because if I don't have something in front of me to talk about, I just can't sit there and just go, all right, well, here's what's on my mind. I'm out of toilet paper. My kids' grades should be better. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Day.
Right. So it's easy. I always have something to work off of, either physically or another person. So talking with Keith, I'm like, hey man, you just one of those natural things. You want to do a podcast? He's like, sure, fuck it. What do we want to call it? And we went through a few stupid names that didn't really stick. And then Paul Mitchner, author of Liminal, if anyone's familiar with that game, go check it out. Urban UK horror, fantastic game. He made some comment, which isn't new, but he's the one that we got it from, said, what I think TTRPG sounds like phonetically, TITTERPIGS. And Keith and I looked at each other and he said, we're going to offend some people who are going to take it the wrong way. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
Titty pigs. No.
So we named it, and I had already had a bit of experience with the video and audio editing, so got a free copy of Audacity. Again, the mics were cheap, so it kind of sounds like crap in the beginning. I really didn't know as much about as audio editing as I thought, and so we right off the bat, we just we would pick a subject and we would talk about new games that we got, and it would just kind of we started with, it needs to be structured, it needs to be a 3-part process, and we have to do this and have transitions and this and that, and then eventually it just rolled into just kind of a natural thing. The format of the podcast changes episode to episode depending on how much I feel like editing and putting stuff in and whatnot. There may be a 3-part structure, there may be a 1-part structure. And we're not that frequent with it because we're both, real people with real lives and jobs. So,
Yeah.
we've been doing it for a few years now. We've just got to episode 45.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
And, but Keith himself, he's busy. He works for the Air Force. So, obviously the Air Force has been busy the past few years too.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
but it's more, the one thing that I liked about it is it's provided a more in-depth reach into the hobby and speaking with people and having some really interesting and great interviews, because Keith has the inside scoop. They know who he is. Whereas, at a certain point, it's like, hey, Ken Haidt, would you like to come on my channel and chat with me? It's like, who the fuck are you? Whereas Keith can go, oh yeah, I know Keith. He edited this book for Pelgrane Press. Sure, I'll come on and talk with you too. So it's been a lot of fun. He's my gaming heterosexual life mate is what I call him. But it's two different formats. What I do in solo on the channel and what I do with Keith on the podcast kind of scratches various itches that neither one do themselves. So it's a nice little format. But most importantly, aside from TITTERPIGS, anyone listening or, listening this later, if you're not live, definitely check out Rolling Boxcars. If you want some good reviews on not just RPGs, but board games, it's Keith and a few other gents who's done this. They do it for years, and it runs the gamut. Old school games, new school games, board games, card games, all sorts of stuff. You'll find it there at Rolling Boxcars. So that's my plug. You're welcome, Keith.
Where is he? Is he on? Is that a podcast?
No, Rolling Boxcars is a blog site. Rolling Boxcars.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, you have to read. For the old school way.
What is this reading? How about a speak and spell?
Reading is what I do 10 minutes before I fall asleep with my tablet. So that's what reading is.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Did you find it, Matt?
Maybe I don't want to put up like the wrong site. So I'll just does this look right?
That is it. Yes.
Oh,
good job.
Good. I will not.
Rolling Boxcars, everybody.
Yeah.
So that's what Scott's talking about. Joe, check it out. It looks like it. It looks pretty. Oh yeah, look at this. Look at all the details.
They've been doing it for several years now, so you'll find all sorts of things. And Keith is also one of the admins for oh God, what's it called? The board game site. I always do this. I always
Board
get
Game Geek. Is it Board
Game Geek? Board Game Geek, but he does the role playing game site, RPGgeek.com.
Okay.
So he does a lot of the administration for that too. So yeah, so he's entrenched in a lot of things.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story, and it's interesting, the process and everything. I mean, you're back. How you came to get is very similar. How you became to our roots to podcast. A lot of similarities there. You have some good views, very altruistic views about D&D and gaming. I'll give you that. Like you want to bring the positive about it. Like, and there's stuff everybody listen. Scott's right. There's stuff everybody complains about a game, but especially the legacy games, because like back in the day, the only way you learned about a game is playing it. There was no this like social media. We couldn't talk to each other. Like you had your little groups of people. And I said this during my interview, like you didn't walk up to, you didn't go to the bar and talk about your fifth level paladin to everybody, right? You talked about something else because they look at you funny. Like, so it's an interesting place to be. So our older guests get it, or younger guests try some of the old games. Like some of the old Palladium Heroes Unlimited was like the first superheroes game I really played besides Marvel. And you could build a character, and the mechanics are a little messed up with MDC and SDC and all that jazz. But anywho, well, we are. We've had a good run here. We're almost coming up an hour and 10 minutes, which is always a sign of a good guest. You had shared a lot of information. I appreciate it. In closing, is there anything you want to say, Scott?
Pretty much just in regards to the hobby and gaming. don't cloister yourself in a particular game. I know it's very easy to, this is my favorite game, this is all I want to play, but branch out, go and leave your comfort zone, play a game you're not comfortable with, play something super crunchy, or if you're into super crunchy games, play a storyteller game, play something that, play a fluffy game if you're into, the dark and dramatic or the grimy and gritty. Go out and just play and expose yourself. Yeah, be polygamorous. I'm just at Nathan.
That's Nathan. That's
No,
Nathan.
that was
Oh,
me,
okay.
actually.
Oh, that was you. Thanks.
I'm channeling Nathan.
Thanks, Darcy.
But yes, definitely, just play these games. Be open-minded. Being open-minded to it. But I think one more thing I would just say is also be aware of other people and the games that they love. It's one thing to joke about, Palladium and Rifts, right? They've deserved it for over the years, but there's people who legitimately love that game, and I would never completely take a piss all over.
I actually
someone's
love
game.
Rifts, even though it was a little weird. I still love it.
But that holds true for anyone else's games. I've had enough of people complaining about Powered by the Apocalypse being a bunch of indie purple-haired kids who don't know how to role-playing game, and I'm tired of the indie purple-haired kids saying that the gray-haired neckbeard grognards all want to complain and bitch and go play D&D in their basement. No, we're all as diverse and welcoming as we can be, and don't let a couple bad apples spoil your experience in the hobby just because you ran into some dickhead, whether they be 50 or 15, because
or 5.
Right,
Those 5-year-olds can be real dicks, guys.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's no age limit on dickheads. Just because they agree with you politically or socially doesn't mean that they can't still be an asshole. So that's it.
Good. How about you, Matt? Anything, bud?
That's it. I mean, I would say thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It's I don't think there's probably some topics we didn't even get to cover. We didn't talk one lick about Call of Cthulhu or any horror.
We can get back to that.
Like
There could be a round 2.
I don't think this is the last time we're going to see Scott.
Yes.
And so, take care. Have a happy Turkey Day coming up.
You too.
And,
Happy Thanksgiving.
We'll see folks
happy whatever.
We'll see you guys
Happy
out there
potatoes.
in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen early in December. So we're going to have some live content from PAX, but we'll see what December holds.
You going to Pona Pack, Scott, or that's a little far from
No, that's a little far from me.
bad.
It's being on the West Coast, it's very hard to justify going to all the great cons that exist, in the Midwest and the East. So, and I kind of blew my wad this year, with Gen Con, which wasn't cheap. But in the coming years, one of the things that I plan on going to is Gamehole Con. Would love to go to Gary Con. Some of the other ones, PAX is another one, but the other ones outside of California, eventually I'll make it there. Where are you guys centrally located? If you're able to
He's
say.
in Pennsylvania and he's not going to PAX.
I'm in Pitts. No, listen. I'll explain it this way. Had time off.
No.
Yeah.
Somebody very close to me decided that we needed to go to this birthday party.
Got it.
When they did it, I told them I'd think about it. They said, "Hey, we're going." I go, because I mentioned to do this. I went, oh, and they had their heart set on it, and I was like, oh. Great, I'm going to shit on them again. I'm just going to go shit on my friends. So, which is, it is what it is. I'm not.
Yeah.
This isn't me complaining. It's like, we are married and have a life, and it's back in where we used to live, and gets to see her friends that she misses. I'm like, okay, fine. So next year, I'm going to, as soon as I found the dates, I'm just going to block it all out in my calendar. I've decided. It's the only way to do it.
Yes.
But anyway,
there's a lot of cons that I can't go to either. And
I keep we got families and you got responsibilities, so
that
and we'll have fun. So
that retirement dream of being a traveling gaming hobo, right? Of like just going to all of them. I've got that in my brain. I see myself just like when I retire, just driving around, hitting them all, just going and just doing as much gaming as possible and travel and travel as well, right? So it's like, hey, what's nearby this con? So all right, well, we're gonna if we're not careful, it's gonna be another hour.
Oh, easily.
We love y'all. We love y'all. Good night, and everybody take care now. Bye bye.
Bye.
Good night.